And last but not least, I would like to present you our last speaker, Professor Sarhat Petrosyan, PhD in urban planning from the National University of Architecture and Construction of Armenia, where he taught for 13 years. He is the former director of the Cadastre Committee of Armenia, and what is more important, is the founding director of Urban Lab. And as such is really committed in the promotion of a greater respect for urban landscapes in Armenia. And we hope we will collaborate with him in the ambit of ROCHEMP for the implementation of Action C. Professor Petrosyan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gayan and Ani, for this opportunity. It's great to be with this in this row of experts from different countries. I will share my screen and I will switch off my video because I'm not sure that quality of my internet is really good. So if you let me, I will share my screen and switch off my video. Okay, I wasn't successful, so I will share only my screen. So do you see my screen? Is it shared? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So Gayan introduced me, so I can just start my presentation, which is structured in the 3 parts. The first part I will tell very quick about the context. Also, I will share with you some case studies, and then I will focus a bit on the 33rd or Firdousi district that is currently a kind of hot topic in Yerevan. As I know that I'm the last one, so I will try to go a bit fast. Especially the previous presentation was kind of covering a bit Armenian context. So just for the beginning, as I know that majority of our discussions are about Yerevan, this is a poster that we did in 2010, where we highlighted 3 main layers of Yerevan: pre-Soviet, Soviet, and the current layers. And the black dots are those dots that kind of connecting these 3 layers of Yerevan. Why I thought that this is an important thing to share with you, to show how limited area or how limited is our space for maneuvering for preservation of the pre-Soviet heritage. Why I'm highlighting, and I will talk more about the pre-Soviet heritage, because this is the layer in Yerevan which is really endangered currently. As the majority of you know, that on the global level, the discourse about the preservation of heritage in urban areas started in late 60s, early 70s. It reached the Soviet Union in 1980s only. It started from Baltic countries, and then only in 80s in Armenia we had some initiatives to try to preserve urban heritage. One of the first examples was the competition for the Gond Old District. I will share with you now some info about that competition, which was one of the first cases that there was a holistic approach to preserve entire historic district, and it was really quite close to the current understanding of the preservation that we are talking on the professional and non-professional communities. There was other 2 projects, Zoragyur District Reconstruction and Alaverga or Sarhat Petrosyan Street Reconstruction. Why I call them reconstruction? Because they were not classical conservation projects. They were kind of imitating, in some cases, the historical environment, pre-Soviet historical environment of the Yerevan. In many cases, only the main facades were preserved, and underneath we have reinforced concrete structures. And for that reason, I use the term reconstruction. The last example, Alaverga or Sarhat Petrosyan Street, is really important for us because this is junk area to the Firdousi area, which currently we are trying to preserve. So this is one of the renderings of the winning project of Gond District, which, as I said, it was organized in 1980s, in particular in 1985. And 1986, they announced the winners of the winner of the competition. And why I want through this slide, I want to just with the cursor, I'm highlighting the white buildings, which are completely new. And although they were giving references to the old Alcon's architecture, but these black ones are preserved ones, and it means that at that time we had kind of quite singular buildings in Con district that were standing, and we could preserve them. Now, in other slides, I will show you that these areas are completely destroyed and we don't have that heritage anymore. In 2000, after collapse of Soviet Union and independence, gaining independence, the first 10 years were really tough period for Armenia. It was collapse of Soviet Union. There was a conflict and ongoing war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, earthquake in Spitak in 98. So Armenia's economy started to recover only in 1998 at that period. And one of the first quite rude projects or developments that we had in Yerevan was demolition of the destruction of the old municipality building in 1999. And this was the first project that we saw how rude, in a quite rude way, under the urban development, we can lose our heritage. And why this particular example is important is not only because the old municipality was demolished in a very rude way. It was realized on the name of Alexander Tamanian, who developed master plan of Yerevan in the first years after Sovietization. Why it's interesting, because in 1924, one architect proposed the master plan of Yerevan, and then in 1999, something about like 75 years after his proposal, historic building was demolished, referring to the master plan dated 75 years ago. I will show a photo from this building, the only photo that we have from this building. And then a bit later, a few years later of that, there was a cleanup in the Northern Avenue area. Why we call it cleanup? Because entire heritage layer of the 19th century from center of Yerevan was just cleaned up for the building in Northern Avenue. Again, an idea referring to the Tamanian's master plan. And then it continues the main avenue project, and an example that Raffaella Simonelli presented was about that main avenue area in 2007, and we will talk about that project shortly. So this is the Yerevan municipality building. It was demolished in 1999 for opening a new street in center of Yerevan. And those that had chance to be in Yerevan, I don't know why I didn't put the photo of that street at what kind of building we have instead of it. But this was really important building because Yerevan municipality, pre-Soviet Yerevan municipality was located here. The first years of the Soviet Yerevan was here. The first two floors were designed by the first chief architect of Yerevan of pre-Soviet period. And the top floor was designed by the first chief architect of Yerevan of the Soviet period. So this fantastic building was just demolished, and very few stones are preserved currently. And then this is me in front of the government building. Slowly in the mid-2000s, we started to raise some awareness project or awareness initiative for preserving urban heritage in Yerevan. So in 2005, we found out that the building on the right side is endangered, and there's a process to demolish that. So this was the first case that professional community and society, young activists, urban activists managed to preserve this building. Although this is what is remaining from that building, it's integrated in a very bad way to the new five-star hotel. But at least this building was really they already started to take the top stones, and by having kind of civic initiatives, we managed to preserve this building. And this is one of the main streets located in one of the main streets of Yerevan, on Abovian Street. That was a fantastic historic district with very nice buildings, and this is one of the rare cases that we can say that it's preserved. And then after that, our colleagues who joined us from Armenia can remember that there were several other initiatives trying to raise awareness about the pre-Soviet heritage. So And I think that was the period that we started have more coverage and media about heritage. Unfortunately, at that time, we didn't have proper discourse in the academia or professional communities. And quite late, we had these kind of discussions, multidisciplinary discussions, discourse on preservation. And one of the first comers was this great initiative initiated by Guyane and Milano Polytechnic. And we had a lot of colleagues and students started to study or go a bit deeper on the preservation. So this sentence is a crucial sentence. So it's taken from the architecture history book that we are teaching to our students. And Varazdat Harutyunyan, who was the chair of the at the architecture school, so he was thinking that early 19th century Yerevan was not a big, abundant, typical Eastern town with crisscross streets. So that was the mindset that pre-Soviet Yerevan didn't have anything valuable. Our colleague Raffaella Simonelli was showing the North District, which was a separate village at that time and had a population of something about like 2,000 inhabitants, if I'm not mistaken. And that was like kind of livable place for quite a long time. And during the poor public administration, we have the current situation that we have there, but of course there's a lot of potential. So this is a good example that how in Northern Avenue areas, listed monument, and they will try to preserve the facades. With bulldozer, it was demolished, and none of these stones are preserved, and we lost all these periods. So, but this was realized by the generation of the restoration architect or state officials who called themselves restoration architects, who signed under all these papers. And I'm just reminding you that that was 2005. It wasn't 1970s or 80s. And then with some friends, we initiated this new type of the posters, because in the Soviet time, there were signs on those many historic buildings that the building is protected by the state. So we initiated this, that the building is initiated by the society, and we were putting these paper signs on those buildings that we thought that they are going to be preserved. One of the other initiatives is that because there was a kind of, together with the Northern Avenue, there was a quite like rough and rude intervention in that main avenue area that Professor Simonelli was showing us. So we organized a petition, and I think we collected quite good amount of the signatures, that we were asking to the Yerevan municipality to stop destruction and build a historic district in the center of Yerevan. And that was the moment that there was a political decision to preserve one old historic district in Yerevan that we call Main Avenue, and now it's called Old Yerevan. And then another kind of successful example that the same intention continued till for the Armenian Soviet heritage of 1960s. So this fantastic open air cinema hall was again in danger, and they already were planning to destroy it. And again, with the help of the society, again with the petitions, with a lot of the lobbying and things like that, we managed to preserve that building. So I will show you, I think, 6 or 7 case studies showing how this process went. So this is the Northern Avenue area, which is the most important and iconic urban intervention that we had, and it's not only on the Armenian scale; it's on the like also regional and post-Soviet region. It was one of the first large-scale urban development projects that happened. So on the left side, you can see the situation that we had there. This building is the one that I showed that they were it was destroyed with the bulldozer, and we had quite nice historic district, of course. For 17 years, people living in this region, area or districts, they thought they were told that they will kick them out from there, and government will provide them new housing estates, social housing estates. So these people never tried to fix their houses. They didn't invest in their houses. Also, if we consider that majority of these people came from other places, because this was in the pre-Soviet period, this was the center of city, so wealthy kind of or upper middle class society was living in this area, and after Sovietization, they were sent to exile or they just left the country. So some new people started to live in their houses, and then they always knew that one day government would provide a new housing because this area was called under the plan, which means that one day they will make a cleanup and they will give them new houses. So people didn't try to improve their living environment. So for that reason, we had this kind of environment. In the middle, we see the model, the mock-up that was developed at that time showing that what kind of development is going to happen. On the right side is another proposal that they did, group of architects did in the 1970s. So this discourse of building this Northern Avenue, which initially was called Sarhat Avenue, was initiated in 1970s, but it became, they started to realize this in 2000. I have a separate paper about this, so those who are interested can just Google Aratian Street, and I think it will bring. So this is the evolution of that district. So the first one, you don't see the dates. So the first one is the situation in the early 20th century. The second and the third one are some examples of Tamanian's master plan. And then at the end, I think we have what is realized. And then the same kind of, the same way we started to develop the main avenue area. So this is exactly the area that Professor Rafael Simonelli was showing that. So from the previous model that I showed you how Yerevan Center had to be developed, so that was the plan to just tone down that area and make a park. Of course, it wasn't realistic because of the economical issues and also because of our petitions. There was decision to keep that historical district in 2005-06, and then at the moment when we were kind of ready to start this project on two sides of this two streets or district, we already had high rises. So now if you walk on this historic district, on both sides we have like 12, 22-story buildings that are kind of not letting you to feel the historic environment that we had. And then based on this petition, this proposal came, and unfortunately, some of students from your program that we were hoping that they are going to be the change makers, that they will change this mindset in our societies. Unfortunately, they are also involved in this project. This is reality, but this land is being built in the center of Yerevan, and majority, something about 60% of the facades are kind of imitations of the other historic buildings that were demolished in the last 20, 30 years. So this controversial project now is in process. Luckily, it's going really slow, and so we do hope that one day we'll be able to revive that project. But majority of the people think that this is a good solution. In Yerevan, in 19th century, we had like very few buildings that had 3 floors. Here, in some cases, we have 5, 6 floors, and then we have this umbrella glass hat on top of entire historic district. And when we are saying historic district, we are talking about the streets, about the public spaces that we have. Typical Yerevanian street buildings had yards, courtyards with the wooden balconies. So in fact, even if we build this district, I hope we won't, walking on the street, you will not have any kind of feeling that it's a historic district. So it's total fake from A to Z. And this is some examples that is already built. Here we have 6-story buildings. Everything here is from scratch. In Yerevan, we had very few brick buildings, and even now, if I'm not mistaken, this brick is important because we don't have production of the brick. And then you can see here, you can see the glass coverings that goes on top. And the third is the Kont district. This is the reason why we got involved in urban preservation. So Kont, in the late 18th century, was again a separate village as Nok. And during time, it became part of the Yerevan. And in the Tamanian's master plan, it was again planned to just destroy everything and kind of build completely neoclassical new district. Luckily, we got in 1990s in this condition, so it's quite like interesting district with very interesting urban fabric. We have kind of interconnected, nice streets that we think that it's really valuable. And again, you can see that center of Yerevan was built. Here you can see the Northern Avenue is not here. Entire this district is the historic one is there, but now in here in this one we don't have it anymore. But the circle area that you can see, this was well preserved. So this is some images from that district. And this is a proposal from the competition of 1980s by Arshabi Aghekian. He was kind of trying to preserve, but the huge amphitheater in the middle and a lot of modern intervention were not, at least from looking from this moment, we cannot call it preservation. So this is what we have. This is a study that we did in the during Soviet period. In the periphery, some new buildings were built, but the the core wasn't built, and luckily we have the historical districts or the core historic district kind of preserved. Some examples of the buildings dated to the 17th, 18th century. There's a collapsed mosque that is with a very interesting yard. We have some basements which are very interesting. And this image shows the nice evolution of the cones. So the first one is the competition that we had in 1980s. In 2006 and 7, there was not a proposal to just keep the street direction and build high-rises around it. In 2008 and 9, there was French architects. It was really hard to find their names, proposed another proposal. And the last one is the same architect who did 1980s. It's kind of quite, again, for me, from my perspective, quite controversial restoration or quite controversial intervention for the same district. The case study number 4, which is about Gyumri, the 4th largest town. I will just go in this part a bit faster. So again, we were not focused on Yerevan. We proposed some examples. So, and then there was initiative to preserve or rehabilitate some historic districts of Gyumri. And this is a brand new building. There was a really nice 2-story building, and the only thing that is reminding from the old building is that this window. The rest, everything, the stones are completely new. So again, like why I'm showing this example, because by having good intention of preservation, when it comes to the actual realization stage, we have this kind of results. And the irony is that very few inhabitants even remember what we had before that, like 3 or 4 years ago. We also tried to have some intervention in Goris town, which is another nice historic town. Here we are more successful relatively, but then we have this new process of having this brand new red roofs that Goris never had this kind of roofs. So now there is a project that is ongoing, a World Bank project, and many people are happy that we are restoring Goris, but again here we have a lot of small issues that I think that needs to be revised, or we need to be more cautious. And then, as I said, at one point we started to reach the Soviet heritage. So Petsamor is a fantastic town built in 1970s, 80s. And we just published a book that we are trying to open up the heritage and trying to show to our society that heritage of this period is also valuable. At one day we have to preserve also them. And then at the end, I want to just focus a bit on the 33rd district or Firdousi district. So the reason why we call this district Firdousi, because there's a street that we call that is named after a Iranian poet or writer, Firdousi, and there was a market around that street. So majority of the people living in Yerevan calls that the entire district Firdousi. But in fact, the legal name of the district is 33. Here, this is a map that shows on the right side is the Norton Avenue. The yellow buildings are those existing buildings and the pattern that we had there. And then you see how the, with a surgery knife, we cut entire fabric that we had that area. So now we are doing the same things. The plan is to do the same things in Firdusi. So you have, here you see the existing historic direction and those streets. The yellow ones are those buildings that we have there. The red ones are listed monuments that will be protected. And these gray hatched buildings are the proposal. So the proposal that currently is being discussed is just, again, tone down everything, make a completely new urban pattern in that area, and preserve only the buildings on the edges. And this row of the buildings are those that were reconstructed in 1980s, again, in the framework of the restoration that we had in the last years of the Soviet Union. So this is one of the proposals. So that big, huge, round-shaped square in the middle and the buildings around, and you can see that only the buildings in peripheries will be protected. This is some training or test that we did because the majority of the discourse goes, so from the economical perspective, it's not feasible to preserve the historic district, things like that. And already we have some investors who invested in the project, and currently we have figures that are about $70 million were invested for owning the land. And then the plan was to have 150,000 square meters built up area. So during this exercise, we tried to show them that if we keep the historic district, directions, street, if we keep the historic fabric, we can provide the same amount of the square meters. So from economical perspective, it's feasible. The problem is that this kind of development is not happening, is somewhere else. This is the current proposal that was online, or it was published in 2015. So again, this is this round circular square in the middle. They started demolish the first buildings, and then there was strong public reaction, and then there were some revisions that a new street emerged between these historic buildings that will be preserved and between the new development. And I think here we have some examples of that street. This is completely new Disneyland that is being promoted, that will be built in these peripheral areas to keep the historical district from the new development. Having this in mind, and this is the rendering that recently is shared by the initiative, the initiative who is going to develop. So these are the historic 2-3-story buildings. This is the new development, and this is the main development, which is 13-story behind this development. So having this in mind, and also some young people started to fight for this district, we were asked to help them to organize a competition. And then as we had some experience of organizing international competitions, with quite very limited funding, we organized this competition, which is deadline is 10 of September. And in a very short time, we gathered all the materials, all the data that we have, and we tried to kind of define what kind of expectations we have. And we hope that by September 10th, we will have a good amount of the proposals with good quality. And we'll present to the Yerevan municipality and the government to consider these options also. And there's one small element of optimism that one of the high-ranked officials, who is one of those who is in charge of this development, agreed to consider our proposals that will be considered feasible from their side. So we are hoping to have good results and present to our decision makers. Thank you.